Welcome back to Dissect of the Dead, Nocturnal Emissions, Nocturnal episode, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, let's get down to Daredevil Born Again, episode 4. Now, like with my previous videos, I still think that this show is on a solid, decent track. Uh, you know, it, there's a lot of good, a lot of iffy spots, It feels like Disney Marvel is actually trying with this one. So let's break it down into the goods and the bads. We'll start off with the negatives here. All right. So the negatives that I found about this episode: White Tiger. Spoiler, by the way. Spoilers from here on. If you haven't seen the episode, go back and watch it. This is your only warning. But White Tiger, he's done. He ain't coming back. Not coming back. We did get to see his niece Ava, and I thought that scene was pretty good. Most of the acting's still pretty good. Charlie Cox, like I said in my last video, excuse me, he carries this show. Charlie Cox carries this show, but he's moved away from White Tiger to go and focus on another patient, or not patient, client named Leroy Bradford. And Leroy Bradford was, he robbed a store to get some candy, and the police were kind of being dicks to him, police brutality and all, because we have to show that white man bad, police bad, typical Disney Marvel stuff right there, woke identity politics crap out of the way. Um, I thought it was fine. It wasn't like insulting or anything until later on where we get to Leroy. So Leroy, whenever he's met with Matt, and Matt's explaining to him, hey, you have a criminal record and we have to negotiate a deal to get you out, but you're going to have to serve a couple days in jail, right? Consequences of the crime. It's punishment for the crime, basically. And Leroy, as a character, is extremely rude. No, I mean, sure, he's relatable. It seems like a realistic person, but he's extremely rude and he's not very likable. And he even tries to. This is what made me kind of like cringe a little bit, was the fact that he tried to excuse his crime by saying, well, what if it was just a scroll? It wasn't me who was trying to steal that candy. It was a scroll. I was like, we're really going to acknowledge the scrolls now? Like, are we going to ever address that entire Secret Invasion thing? Anyway, I'm gonna go off on a tangent with Secret Invasion. But it was funny that they name dropped the scrolls there. But Matt, in this entire episode, much like Wilson Fisk, is battling with who he is, battling with his identity. Um, so this is going to be all over the place. There's no real structure to this video already. But what I like about this episode is uh, it's got several layers to it. Matt and Wilson Fisk are both battling with their identity and battling with that Wilson Fisk is trying his best to be a competent and respectful mayor of New York. But deep down, he can't help but be the violent criminal that is Kingpin. Same thing with Matt Murdock. He wants to be the helpful neighborhood lawyer that helps the little guy get out of trouble. But deep down, he is the brutal, crime fighting vigilante Daredevil. And I like that they're both trying to restrain themselves, and by the end of the episode, we get to see a glimpse of who they really are. By the end of the episode, Matt, he starts looking back at his old costumes, his old Daredevil gear. We get to see several, I counted like 6 of his Daredevil cowls, all different shades, different colors, right? And then he started practicing with his stick on the rooftops, hinting that he still misses being Daredevil. He misses being a vigilante. That's the kind of stuff I like. This proves that this show has more, substance, more things to talk about than Secret Invasion and Agatha All Along or Echo, right? I'm not sitting here saying, oh, this is another wasted episode on Disney Plus. No. There's stuff to talk about here, right? Wilson Fisk. Now, what I really hate about this episode is there's a lot of white man bad. It's not as insufferable as, a lot of other stuff, especially Disney Marvel related. It's not as bad as some of that other stuff. And so it kind of, I would say it's forgivable, much like the last video I said, I'd say it's forgivable, but Disney Marvel does not deserve the benefit of the doubt, so it's you know it's hard to let it slide. But so far, it's not insulting, and I can understand why people don't like it. I 100% understand why they don't like it, and I see their criticisms are valid. You know, because they cuck I almost said cuck the penguin. They cuck the kingpin. Like the first scene he's in is in a therapy session with Vanessa, which is very Sopranos, and the therapist asked Vanessa to describe her lover, her affair partner, and like right in front of Wilson Fisk, straight up cucking the dude. That was uncomfortable to watch. Plus, it's filled with, hey, shut up, man. Shut up, male. You have a balls and penis. Shut up. Women are talking. There's a lot of that in this episode, too. But another thing with Leroy Bradford, this is something that's like a double edged sword for me. He explains that, it's hard for someone like him. He was, of African American descent. Uh, that, since he's in jail, he's fighting the system. You know, that he's basically being held down by the man, systemic oppression, systemic racism, all that shit. They didn't go hard on it. They didn't go say white man bad like entirely with that sequence. It was handled well enough that you get the message and you understand, you have empathy for the character, even if he is a massive asshole. You still have empathy for him without going the direction of like Vilma, where it's just like all white people bad, you know? But his dialogue about fighting the system, being held down by the man, like the systemic racism, mirrors Matt Murdock's feeling of dread, the feeling of helplessness. Whenever every time he tries to get a win, he loses. Something you have to understand about Daredevil. Daredevil loses more than he wins. Spider-Man has a lot of easy wins. Batman, a lot of easy wins. Superman, a lot of easy wins. Daredevil, what makes him such a compelling character is that he loses more than he wins. Kingpin outsmarts him at every turn. He's blind. He literally has a disability working against him as a hero, right? And so the feeling of helplessness, the feeling of taking so many L's, that pressure, that weight, and still he gets up and fights. He still goes out there and does what he needs to do. It's very inspiring for someone like myself. I try to feel that energy of like, never giving up, truly never giving up, even when the world is against you, right? And so that's something I love about Daredevil. That's something I like to relate to. And they kind of mirror that with the whole systemic racism thing of like it's a never-ending losing battle for, someone of African American descent. Now, granted, like I said, double-edged sword. As good as that is, the themes of that are, you know, that could have gone way worse, and I'm glad it didn't. But the fact that it was still in there, I don't trust Disney Marvel with that. I don't trust them doing that kind of commentary. But props to them for at least pulling it off in a degree that wasn't as insulting as something like, say, Vilma, you know, where it just ended up going spiraling into pure racism. Um, but there was a lot of good in this episode, and most of the bad was just like, cucking Kingpin at every single chance they had. They had him, and that's the thing is like it's. I think it's the buildup of the journey. They had to cuck Kingpin so that we could eventually get to the point where Kingpin comes around and fully embraces his identity. Same thing with Matt. We had to see Matt take so many L's, fall into the pit of like depression, a little bit of, not quite, character assassination, but, sad Daredevil before he rises again to become Daredevil, become the vigilante. Same with Kingpin, they have to cut Kingpin until he eventually breaks and cracks and breaks and becomes not the vigilante, the criminal that he always was. In fact, at the very end of the episode, we see he has Vanessa's affair partner, Adam, locked up in a cage while he eats his meal, hinting that he's still got that Kingpin in him. Wilson's still got that Kingpin in him. And the dialogue about, being able to change and then not really being able to change who you really are deep down. A lot of that was, you know, pretty good. Uh, I still have my reservations about this show. I still am not like 100% like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm not sold on it. You got to ease me back into it. But so far, it's been pretty decent. So far, it's, hasn't been like insulting dog shit or anything like that. So I've been impressed with it for the most part. I still don't like that they got rid of White Tiger like that. Now, speaking about the Punisher involving White Tiger, after we got distracted with that little systemic racism thing, Daredevil goes back to investigating who killed White Tiger. And he finds out that the bullet casing that shot Hector Ayala had a Punisher logo on it. How he felt it, I have no idea, but his heightened senses are better than mine. So, and he's blind, like the glasses. So he eventually goes and he finds Frank Castle, and we get to see John Bernthal. And initially, from what I heard, John Bernthal didn't want to come back as Punisher, like at all, unless there was a good script that he liked. Well, I guess he liked this one, and props where they're due. They didn't straight up cuck Punisher. So I was very happy to see that. In fact, the dialogue in the scene between Frank Castle and Matt Murdock, almost like they picked up right where they left off with season 2 of Daredevil. It's like they still have beautiful chemistry. That scene was not as good as season 2, not as good as season 2 of Daredevil, but still, it's probably the best scene in this show so far. And they battle about what they were talking about in season 2. The Punisher's like, I actually get the job done. I actually get rid of the criminals while you go out here, playing dress up and beating the crap out of them and never get anything done. So the Punisher shitting on Daredevil, but for good reason. That's what the Punisher would usually say. You do a half measure, and you don't get the job done. And Daredevil is sort of taking it, and he's taking the insults, and he's, being like, I don't need to be Daredevil. I need to be Matt Murdock. And Punisher's like, bullshit. And so I'm glad that they didn't straight up just cuck the Punisher and then humiliate him. Now, granted, I haven't seen Punisher season 2. I saw season 1, thought it was great. But I haven't seen season 2, so I don't know if that affects this show or not. It probably doesn't. We'll see if I actually watch season 2 of Punisher. But Matt goes to Frank to see if he has any idea about who killed Hector Ayala. And all the Punisher can really give him a clue on is that the police that are using the Punisher logo as insignia, and what I think I really don't like about the Punisher logo here in the show is that we see graffiti a lot in the show, and one of the graffitis is the Punisher logo with triggered, the word triggered over it. I think that's a little bit too TikTok Gen Z for me. Much like Michael Gandolfini's character and BB Urich, there's a little bit too much Gen Z in this, and I think those characters are unnecessary. They're not really adding so much to the story. I mean, maybe they are. We'll see how it pays off. There's a lot of setup. We're going to have to wait and see how those characters have a good payoff. Right now, BB Urich has very little going on in the story as a whole. But they're like irrelevant side characters right now. So it's like whatever, But the whole triggered thing, I thought that was lame. Because you have to remember, modern Marvel and modern Disney Marvel, they don't like the Punisher logo because it was co-opted by the far right, the military, the police. But you have to remember that Frank Castle was in the military, and where does the Ouroboros end here? Like, where does the military begin and the Punisher end? So what if it was co-opted by the far right, the boogeyman QAnon people? Like, Marvel needs to chill out and actually claim the skull again, because that's what signifies the character of the Punisher. I don't know if we're going to see the Punisher again in this show. I have no idea if he's going to return, but what I have heard is that John Bernthal is coming back for like an hour-long, special presentation like they did Werewolf at Night, or Werewolf by Night. And so we're going to see him again, but I don't know if it's going to be in this show. So they kind of threw him in here as a random cameo it's eye candy. It's eye candy for sure. But John Bernthal is based. John Bernthal is based, and he doesn't miss a step as the Punisher. He pretty much is like he's straight up. I mean, he doesn't say "fuck Disney," but you kind of feel the energy of "fuck Disney" off of his voice, and he doesn't lose a step as Punisher. It's great. Um, but Matt's like, okay, I can see I came here for no reason. You have no idea what's going on with White Tiger or the police who are co-opting your sign. He calls the police that are using his logo a bunch of fanboys. That they're doing it and inspired by him without his permission, basically, which is kind of semblant of the real world, how people in the real world do it, but they kind of made it sound like he was dissing people in the real world. You have to remember this is still Disney Marvel. They're going to make those small little jabs, because we know that Disney Marvel hates the far right. The far right that are using the Punisher logo. So they took a few jabs there, but nothing insulting, like I said before. And the scene was beautiful. Thought it was good, and Matt has to be faced with, the consequences of, not not killing his villains. But that his morality won't allow him to do that, like Frank can't, and he has to face the consequences of that. That's what got Foggy killed by Bullseye, and so that was the whole philosophy battle between them, and Frank is like saying, fuck the system. I don't deal with the police. I don't deal with the system. It's all bullshit, and so there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to unpack in that scene. Now, whether it has relevancy for the rest of the show, only time will tell, but it has relevancy for Matt Murdock's character. And that's what's really important. So overall, good episode. I don't think it was as strong as, say, the other episodes. It actually is kind of annoying leading up to the Punisher sequence. That was probably the one scene that redeemed this episode because everything else was kind of annoying. I didn't really care for Ava Ayala showing up. I didn't really care for systemic racism. The dude, let's be real, the dude that stole, Leroy, when he stole that candy, I mean, I get it. We all have empathy for that. We get it, if you're like homeless or whatever. But my God, dude, like, you don't have to be a dick, first of all. And you need to learn how to not become a criminal. Stop committing crimes. If you have a rap sheet, dog, stop committing crimes. It's pretty simple, right? But at the same time, I get it, right? It's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. And the fact that they were consistently going, shut up, man, to Wilson Fisk and, a lot of the intersectional feminist nonsense. That was all like, this is the weakest episode so far with all that nonsense. But the Punisher scene kind of redeems it, in my opinion. There's also one chick, Sophia, I believe is her name. Super fucking hot. Super hot. I don't know. They even addressed this in season 1 of Daredevil. I don't know how Matt Murdock gets all the hottest women, but that Sophia chick was fucking smoking hot. I don't know what it is. Blind guys getting hot women. That's why I was blind to Anime Matsuri, but that's a story for another day. So let me know what y'all think in the comments below. If you like this episode, did you hate this episode? I don't blame you either way, to be honest. But overall, solid, but not great. Not great, but solid. So yeah, let me know what y'all think in the comments below. It's been Isaac of the Dead. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll see y'all in a video soon. Don't smoke crack.